What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the No Starving Artist podcast. I really have lost track at this point because I haven't uploaded a new one in a while. I have like 4 episodes that are just waiting to be uploaded. So we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 11 or 12. But this is a part 3 with a fantastic guest. I'm really thankful that he's been willing to just continue to do these. I feel like at this point he's kind of a co-host to the podcast. But I'm really, really excited for this episode to just get into some topics that we haven't touched on yet. And so everybody, big round of applause for Jadell Lee. You've heard him before at this point. We know who he is. But we were just kind of talking about what we were going to talk about. And one thing that Jadell brought up at the end of the previous episode, so if you listen to that, you probably heard us kind of allude to it a little bit, which is the business side of dance, particularly kind of how you can go from being a teacher who's maybe doing it part-time, or you're maybe very new to it, or even if you've been doing it for a while, but you just haven't been able to kind of grow it, how you can do that. So I want to kind of pass the torch over to Jadell and let him kind of take it from there, because I know he has a lot of really, really great info on this.
Thank you. No, first of all, I love doing these talks because, again, as we were saying before we started recording, you're always looking for that transparency, because if you're new coming into this, you're always asking the question, but how do I get to that level? How do I do it like that? How do I get the dollar amount or the income that I'm seeking? Or how do I get to the platform or to that level of being able to teach or mentor, etc.? How do I get there? And so I'm really excited to kind of remove the veil on some of these things and kind of give people a reference point or a starting point. Now, when I started teaching, it was more so out of necessity. Like I said before, I didn't really want to teach. And my wife and I, we made the joke, my parents and I, we would always make the jokes, Jadell, do you even like children? And that was the running joke in the beginning of my teaching career. Now, I love kids and they love me, and it took me a minute to get there. But before, I just needed my Metro phone bill paid. So, how can I do that? And so that's why I started teaching initially. There were some other things and some other factors that played a role at the particular time. But again, 17, 18 years old, it was something I could do because it was simple, something I could do because I was knowledgeable, something I could do that allowed me to still be entertained and eager and excited about doing it. And then it became this career over time, right? And so, but when I started, there wasn't anyone saying, hey, here's how you can do this or here's how you can do that. There were some mentors along the way. Here's how you handle people. Here's how you discipline your disappointment. Here's how you work with this person or this individual. But it wasn't necessarily, here's how you calculate the numbers. Here's how the numbers add up. Here's how you can make your talent or your skill stretch so that it can actually get you a sizable part-time income or a sizable full-time income. And so the first thing is first, and this is something that I shared with a client just the other day. You have to see yourself as a collaborator and or partner with any studio that you work with. Whether it's guest teaching or whether it's weekly teaching, you are a partner. You are a collaborator. Now, for me, where that changed was, again, when I started teaching, I was always working for someone. I had a boss. They told me what to do. And I eventually became this yes man. After a while, that started to work against me. Why? Because I wasn't necessarily getting what I needed out of the dynamic of that relationship. Yes, I got to teach, but I didn't really get the opportunity to stretch, to grow, to trial and error, to explore, So in that, I started, again, shifting my understanding. I had a mentor say, Jadell, you have to see yourself as a collaborator. You have to see yourself as a partner, meaning you bring something to the table. You're not just invited to the table. So when I say that, because first, everything begins with mindset. Everything begins with mindset. The mind leads, the body will follow. So in that, when you're looking at, hey, I'm considering this role, or I'm considering, guest teaching here, or I'm considering working here weekly, see yourself as a collaborator. See yourself as someone that brings an equal amount of value, because as dance educators, we are the charisma, we are the talent that draws in clientele and supports the business. Okay. The studio.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I do have one thing, because I think this is a confusing point that a lot of teachers don't understand. I think a lot of teachers expect the studio to fill their classes, which I understand where that comes from, but I think what you're kind of alluding to is, in order to really scale, you have to look at it from the other way around. If you are pulling kids in, then that helps add to your credibility, to your accountability, to your reputation amongst
All
the
of it.
community. Yeah.
All of it. And so, yes, if we flip it on its head and look at it from the other side, you are a part of that. Now, here's the thing. What I'm not saying is, well, I do this, I built the studio, I should, entitlement. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you have to understand, in what ways do you contribute to the growth and the fruition of the studio? Meaning, for me, it's my positivity. I get new students in, I will stop everything. Hey, everybody, we have a new student. What's your name? Jane. Everyone say hi to Jane. All of that, to your point, adds to credibility. All of that makes you a good hire. All of that adds to the success of your individual class or classes, right? That enthusiasm, that positivity, just in demeanor. I haven't even started teaching, but in that, I've worked with a lot of dance educators as colleagues, and they don't necessarily have an inviting presence, or they don't have certain qualities or attributes that, again, could work for them. It actually in turn works against them. So in that, I had to see, okay, I'm collaborating with this studio owner, even though I work for them, because again, it's my charisma for at least this time, this class, or this time block, from 4 to 6 or 4 to 8 or 3 to 5 or whatever it is. I'm a contributing factor to that. So I have to see it that way.
Yeah.
And so in that, it's more so looking at it from a 50-50 perspective. Yes, the studio is established. They have their students. Yes, it is not technically my job to put butts in the seats in that sense. But if I'm contributing to that, it benefits me at a later time. Again, when we come back to asking for raises or asking for other opportunities to be able to do different things. But in that, I just had to see, how do I contribute to the longevity of the studio? My professionalism, my tactfulness, my enthusiasm, so my positive attitude, my ability to show up on time, and my ability to operate and conduct myself accordingly. Wonderful. So there is where it kind of starts, so that you're able to see that there's value in everything that you do versus there's only value in a few things that you do. Yeah. So again, being 17, 18, 19, teaching at a studio, I only saw that there was value in showing up and teaching, but there's no value in anything else. Now, here's the thing, and this is something my therapist had to really help me understand. Your studio owners, your artistic directors, whoever it is that you report to, whoever it is that you are directly accountable to, it's not their job to make you feel warm and fuzzy. It's not their job to specifically advance your career. It's not their job to validate you and everything that you do. And unfortunately, not every studio owner or not every manager or artistic director is in the business of empowering others. So in that, you really do have to gain perspective. And so in seeing yourself as a partner and as a collaborator, you're putting yourself on an equal playing field with anyone that you deal with. Why? Because you would otherwise put yourself down here, just in mindset. Oh, they're the boss. Whatever they say goes. Yes, whatever they say goes, because it's their name outside that door. But I'm also not a yes man. Anything that we do together is a conversation, a negotiation, a collaboration. Even if, again, you're giving me, hey, do this, and you're delegating, and then I'm actually the one who's executing, it's still a conversation. I had to learn not to shy away from tough conversations, shy away from tough conflict or, creative differences. I'm not here to run the place, but if you're asking me to do X, Y, and Z, my opinion, my voice matters to an extent. So in that, finding the right times and the right places to be able to communicate and otherwise facilitate that dynamic in the relationship. So again, I have autonomy throughout my experience working with someone. I had to see it like that, or develop that understanding, because over time, what we find is, people agree to things, but because it's only benefiting one party, you then develop a resentment or a fatigue in fulfilling your role. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about a lot of situations as you're kind of going through this, because I think, not even for me personally, but just like some of it, yes. But I also just know a lot of teachers who feel stuck because they allow teachers and other teachers and other directors and studio owners to create their narrative for
Yes.
them. Whether it's the styles that they do,
Yes.
or the type of choreography they set. So I'm resonating with a lot of what you're saying, because I think it's really, really true that
Yes.
when you consistently say yes to things, even if it doesn't feel comfortable, eventually you get so pigeonholed that it becomes a really frustrating situation, and then that creates that resentment towards the people that are asking that
Yes.
of you. And it's a weird dynamic.
Well, it's a weird dynamic. And again, a lot of that has to do with if we're putting it onto the dance educator. If we're putting it onto the dance educator, a lot of that comes down to your ability to address conflict, your ability to navigate through discomfort, your ability to communicate even when you don't want to. So again, I became a yes man. And part of that was intentional. Part of that was unintentional. The intentional part was, I'm here to learn. I'm here to grow. This is not my final destination. So whatever you're willing to throw at me, sure, let me explore, let me experience. I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
The part that was involuntary or unintentional was more so, like you said, getting pigeonholed in these areas. And the challenge with all of that is that, again, you start to resent your job, or resent the studio, or you just start resenting aspects of your role that otherwise could have been avoided or addressed had you had, again, the confidence or the self-esteem to be able to address those things in conversation. The thing that I want to share when we're developing this mindset of just being collaborators is that we're equal. Yes, I don't own the building, but if we're having to work together, understand that your role in this is just as important as mine, and vice versa. Right. And what that also eliminates is dance educators developing this haughty attitude as though they built the studio, or that if they were gone, that the studio would fall apart. No, I've had to tell many of dance educators, if you leave, that place will still run without you, and they'll thrive, and they'll be well, and they'll be the same thing that they were before you came.
Yeah.
So in that, to really eliminate and kind of humble both parties, mentally for me, I have to go, you know what? I'm working with you. Everything's a conversation. And I have value in what I bring to the table, and in my perspective, and what I have to share. If you ask my opinion, or if I feel like I need to share my opinion, there's still value in that. I found that to be really, really helpful, because the conversations are different. When someone's interviewing me and I'm sitting down with them and they're like, so what do you do? What do you teach? The conversation is different. When we talk about pay rates, the conversation is so different. I'll share. I have a client who recently got hired at a studio, and they have like a chain of studios. So they're more of like a franchise. And so their system is pretty, set it and forget it type of thing, rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
And so, I was just talking to her yesterday, and Monday, and because she's on the younger side, and I say younger as in sometimes age or sometimes experience, right? Talking to her, and I said, hey, make sure you talk to your directors or, your superiors about X, Y, and Z. Well, do you think I should? Do you think I said, you always can. And I said, the fact that you don't want to, the fact that you find it challenging, the fact that it's uncomfortable is the reason why you should. Everything's a conversation. Even though they have their set system, you still have a voice. And they still need you as much as you need them. And what that means is, in order for you to thrive, what do you need? Great, that's going to have to come from them. In order for them to thrive, what do they need? That's going to have to come from you. We have to come together. So if you have that mindset, or at least that tenacity to go, hey, I see that this is what you need me to do, or I see that this is my role and responsibility. Here's what I need in order to do this to your satisfaction, in order for me to do it well. I appreciate you working with me on this. Can we have this conversation? All of that plays a role. And one thing that I was sharing with her, because now that she's a director at this particular studio, that means she's interviewing. That means she's, possibly firing. That means she's setting curriculum expectations. That means she's, again, helping to follow up and hold accountability to the studio as a whole. And then on top of that, she's teaching. On top of that, she's head admin. On top of that, she is, again, integral to that studio's longevity and success. And I was just encouraging her, You make sure that you become a fervent communicator and a fervent listener and a fervent collaborator, because you can't do this by yourself. And this isn't just you doing everything that you're told. You're going to need support.
Yeah.
And what that looks like, what that feels like may be different depending on the expectation, but you have to be willing to see yourself as an equal in getting these things done and in collaborating. But at the end of the day, you have to be willing to talk, listen, give feedback, take feedback. It's a huge give and take. And I think, to your point, we don't really embrace that. It's a give and take. And if we're only giving but not taking, then that's going to create an imbalance. And again, I use the word take instead of receive, because again, a lot of people love to just act like the studio is supposed to be Disneyland and give you all this, that, and a third. And it's not. You have to be willing to take, which means this is what I need from you. It's okay to put an expectation on your studio directors. It's okay to place an expectation on your students. It's okay to place an expectation on yourself. It is a give and a take, and it creates that reciprocity. So that's like first and foremost, going into it with a paradigm shift. I'm here to work with you.
I think the expectation is really important too, because otherwise, going back to that point of resentment, like eventually at some point down the line, you're going to be upset that you didn't set those expectations. And the hard part is a lot of times, a majority of times, it's too late.
100%.
And then I know from my personal experience, there's been a lot of times where I've had to leave situations that I didn't necessarily want to leave because I didn't set those expectations.
100%.
And then later on, it was kind of like, well, that was my own fault, and now I have to leave this situation that I maybe didn't want to.
Well, yes, and I've been in the same boat, because again, the only thing you can do in that situation is learn. And that's what I mean by, again, going into it with the paradigm shift. The conversations are different, because 6 months down the road, I'm not complaining to you and you're not complaining to me about X, Y, and Z. We're then having it's a completely different standard, and it's a completely different dynamic. And I'll give you an example. When I work or speak or collaborate with dance educators or studio directors, etc., whether I'm guest teaching or weekly teaching, they're not talking to me like I don't know what I'm doing. You know, and I say that like that because you could have 10 years under your belt, and if you have a meek personality, studio owners or directors will talk to you as though it's your first day on the job, or or as though it's their way or the highway. And what I make clear from jump is, if it's your way or the highway, I'm more than willing to take the highway. If this is not a good fit, I completely understand. I will say that first thing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me. I'm really excited to see how we can come together. And if we're not able to work together at this particular time, I just appreciate meeting you. Oh, well, okay. Well, you could be here or not be here. So, okay. Well, let's try to make this work. It's not, please give me a job, or, oh, please. No. And it's not an arrogance thing. It's an understanding what you bring to the table type thing.
Yeah.
You know, so go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm interested your approach to how you kind of scaled your teaching initially.
Yeah.
Because I feel like everybody kind of has their own
system
process, or maybe not, but I know what I did and what I feel worked, but I'm really curious as to what you feel like was kind of the thing or the things that kind of led you from starting out at a studio to then being able to kind of like, because essentially what you're talking about is you do reach a point, if you do this correctly, where you can kind of pick and choose
where you work,
you want to go within your, like, obviously within your like
lane.
your area, you know. So how did you go about kind of establishing
Great
that?
question. Yes. So, it's so interesting, and I want to say this for our listeners. Imposter syndrome doesn't go away. I have to say that. Viola Davis said it best. She said, I don't care what anyone says, imposter syndrome doesn't go away. And when she said that, I said, you better preach. Because you could do, I'm telling you, you could be 15 years into the game of teaching, developing talent, and still feel like certain things are it's your first day on the job. Or still feel like you're not at a point where you could ask or request or require certain things. Yeah. And so I just want to start by saying that, because anything that I've accomplished in the very beginning, I stumbled into it. It was never
Yeah.
necessarily like, this is what I'm going to do from start to finish. And so I'm blessed to say, you know, God has been very good at just navigating and bringing things into my life, and me paying attention to them long enough to go, this is the thing. I'm going to hang on to it. So to answer your question directly, I was working at a studio, and it was probably my second studio I had ever worked. Now, mind you, and I make the joke all the time, I was working for pennies on the dollar. And
Yeah.
I quite literally mean that. I promise you, I was probably making, and I don't know how they got away with this, or I didn't have the wherewithal to really agree to, to really understand what I was agreeing to, but I was getting paid like $7-8 a class.
Yeah. I started at $7.25.
I don't know how that, but anyway. So I'm working at this particular studio, and I think I want to say they're probably a year in. So they're brand new. And then I come along, and the two directors primarily teach ballet and maybe some contemporary, but everything's mostly ballet. I taught a lot of the other classes, the hip hop, the jazz, other contemporary classes, a modern class, etc. And I taught various levels. Now, mind you, again, I'm 18, 19, 20. I don't really have anything to compare this experience to. So I'm just doing it. Plus, I'm in college. So, you know, having to, or needing money at that particular time wasn't really a thing, because I had class and all these different things. And so I'm working at this studio, and they start to grow, meaning they move locations, they get to a bigger space. My income doesn't grow. And of course, doing the whole putting in more than I'm getting out. However, I was still growing in other ways. Now, I remember I graduate college, and when you graduate university, you ask that one defining question: what's next? What do I do now? And that's where I was. I graduated college, and I said, dang, what am I about to do? And I was so broke. So broke that I was staying and living with a mentor for free. She had charged me, I want to say like $300 a month. The challenge was I was only making $300 a month. And so even though I was staying with the mentor, I was still on the ramen noodle diet. Okay. And I remember being so frustrated, and I remember being in prayer, and I'm saying, God, you know, I'm so frustrated because, you know, again, creating that imbalance of, I feel like I'm giving more than I'm getting. What do I do? What do I do? And it made me resent the situation so much that I was like, I want to quit, but I don't have anything to quit to. And so the Lord quite literally says, don't worry about it. Keep working there. Keep working on your leadership. Keep working on your character. Keep gaining the experience. And I'm like, what? Which basically meant check your attitude at the door, discipline your disappointment. So I kept on. Mind you, I was teaching, you know, ages 5 to 18. I was teaching, you know, hip hop, jazz, I was teaching these various classes. I ended up getting a new studio job at a studio in a different location. I had to move from Southern California to Northern California. And lo and behold, everything that I was doing at this particular studio, I was getting paid for it at that particular studio, meaning all the levels, all the classes. And so to answer your question directly, how I learned to scale was I had to diversify what I was able to do, and then create price points to that. And that's how it kind of stretched to become a full-time income. So what does that look like? Okay. So if I only teach one style, let's say I only teach hip hop. I need to look for studios that have volume, meaning they have a high student count. So what does that look like? 300 students or more. Okay, 300 students, probably average, slightly above average, depending on the location, right? If you live in California, 300 is nothing. If you live in Utah, that might be a little more or a little less. So you have to look at studios that have volume. If they have volume, that means they're offering more classes per week. So that just means that there's more opportunity for you to come in and do your thing. Now, when it comes to, say, I'm only a hip hop teacher, or I only teach one style, what I mean by diversifying what you're able to do is, okay, I'm a hip hop teacher, hypothetically, but I'm able to teach 3 levels. Okay. Now that 3 levels, just keeping it simple, let's say beginner, intermediate, advanced. So we have that right there. That's 3 1-hour classes that I could pitch or that I could propose. Yes. And at this dollar amount, that dollar amount, that dollar amount, I'm creating X amount of money for the day. Now, mind you, that's only by level. Now, if we break that up by age, I can do beginner, intermediate, advanced of ages 6 to 9, 10 to 13, 14 plus. If I double that, mind you, beginner, intermediate, advanced, open classes, any age, etc. Great, that's 3 hours. But then if I multiply that and then go again 6 to 9, 10 to 13, 14 plus, that 3 becomes 6. So now I have 6 classes in the day that I could potentially teach.
Yeah.
Now, if I scale that, again, because a studio has volume, they have so many students, I can't put everyone in the same 6 classes. Now they have that same schedule multiplied by 3 days of the week. 6 times 3 is 18. I'm already working 18 hours off of one style. And I've worked at studios where primarily I taught hip hop, but it was a different level, different age group every day. And I was teaching like 24 hours in a week. So in that, that's just one style. Now, if I incorporate other styles, I can do hip hop, jazz, contemporary, beginner, intermediate, advanced, ages 4 to 6, 10 to 13, and 14 plus. And that's not including adult classes. So because I'm able to do that, I'm then able to, again, create a checkerboard of my schedule. And primarily for me, that stretches out to 4 to 5 hours per day. I teach 5 days a week. Or I used to teach 6 days, then 5. Now I only teach 4 days, which is nice. That's how you can scale that.
Yeah. Interesting.
So then if we're, again, creating a price point, if I'm getting paid, let's say $50 per hour, but I'm teaching 5 hours, that's 2 times, what is that? 20 times 5. I'm terrible. What is that? 200 for the day? No, 250.
That would be 20 times
5 hours times $50 an hour. Excuse me. That's $250 for the day. Times 5.
Yeah, $250 for the day.
Days. That's $12.50 for the week. So that's how you can scale that.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. I don't think I've ever thought about that before. I've never thought. Yeah, it's because I don't feel like I don't know that I've ever heard of like that approach before, and it's probably just Utah's just weird. It's a weird place, but that makes so much sense. Like here, it's about like shoving as many kids as possible into one class. So it was sort of like, my journey was super similar, just slightly different in the sense that I was shooting for 4 to 5 hours a day, but I was getting that from 4 to 5 studios. So I would be bouncing from 4 to 5 studios throughout the week, in order to reach that 20 to 25 hour mark. And, it was absolutely terrible.
Well, and that's why I said you want to shoot for studios that have the volume, because then again, it increases your likelihood that you're there most of the week, if not the entire week. Because I did the same thing.
And see, and you do have this benefit. And I had a mentor of mine that tried to tell me this so many times, and I just didn't really listen. But he was like, "You got to do more than hip hop. You gotta figure out how to do more than hip hop." And I see the value in that, but I think back then I didn't. But I also really love the first part of your story, because I feel like one thing that is just so far gone at this point in my mind is a lot of teachers in my area, they have no interest in doing that first 2 to 3 years of work. They have no interest in doing it. They want to, even when I was directing for a little bit the past couple of years, I would have people come to me with 0 teaching experience, and they're like, I need to get paid $35 an hour, and I only want to teach advanced kids. And I'm like, what? I don't understand. It's just, and it's so like, I understand that short-term mindset, but it's also like you're going to burn out so quickly when everybody realizes you can't teach.
And I appreciate that you said it that way, because that's a way nicer way than I would have ever said it.
Well, because it's true. You know what I mean? Like you are going to find a studio that will pay you that much. I promise you. You will find someone that will pay you that much that doesn't know any better. they're going to learn really
Yeah.
quickly that you don't know how to teach. They're going to fire you, and then they're going to tell all of the people
Oh,
that they know in the
100%.
community that you
Yes.
can't teach. So now you've just done yourself a massive disservice. Instead of just eating it for 1,
Yes.
2, maybe 3 years, and then being able to go in and say, this
Well,
is
and
my
this is
rate,
what I can
take it or
do.
leave it.
This is what I have experience in. So when God
Yeah,
told me,
yeah,
quite literally, discipline your disappointment, keep going, keep your attitude in check. I
yeah,
had no idea that he was going to turn around and then give me a studio that, again, could pay me at that volume, but then create, again, a
yeah,
model as to like what I just detailed for you, a model that reflected everything that I was able to do and then some. And then
right,
some. So
right,
in that,
right.
what I was able to get from that was the experience. Then God flipped it on its head and said, now I'm going to give you the structure. And I get so
Yeah,
emotional when
yeah,
I think about it like that, because God has been so good just in my career and in my life, because we don't like to look at it that way. Dude, the experience won't look pretty. You know, the experience will look
no,
jacked up
no,
sometimes. When
no,
you put it in its proper place,
yeah,
that's when things start to come together. And I didn't see that at the time, but I'm glad that I was obedient
yeah,
to that, because as I gained more and more experience in dealing with different types of personalities with studio owners, or in dealing with, I did private lessons and people didn't want to pay. Or studio owners would say, you got to do a private with this
yeah,
person, catch them up on the choreo for the recital. I don't want to do it. Well, you got to do it. Oh, fine. Then I don't get paid. Then the studio owner
yeah,
says, well, you got to
yeah,
make sure you get paid up front. Like, why did there was just no like support in that. So as I
yeah,
experienced, I
yeah,
learned. So in that, I just kind of
yeah,
added
yeah,
to my treasure chest of, this is how you do it, this is how you don't do it. But I was still obedient to,
yeah,
well, I'm going to experience it, see how it goes, and then I'm going to make sure that I have
yeah,
standards, expectations, not only for myself moving forward, but other people. And I don't divert from that. But I love that you talked about how
yeah, yeah,
you'll get these dance teachers or people that will stumble. And I always say stumble, because you either luck into it like, oh, I'm actually pretty good at this, or you come into it expecting the stars and the moon. And that's why I said you said it way nicer than me,
yeah,
because you'll get
yeah.
these, dancers at 18 and 19 that will be like, well, I need to get paid this. I'm sorry, who are you?
Yeah,
That will
yeah,
come in
yeah,
asking
yeah,
for a high pay rate, but they have no experience. And when you have no experience, it's not so much that you don't know how to dance or that you don't have the capacity to learn how to teach. It's that you don't have the temperament. You don't have the structure. You don't have the
yeah,
classroom
yeah,
management
yeah,
skills. You teaching a 5 to 7
yeah,
anything, ages 5 to 7 anything, is not necessarily about the choreo. It's about the
yeah,
management. So,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
always challenging. But I always like to break it down. I shared with a mentee the other day. I said, look, there's 3 ways to monetize. The first is through money. Okay, great. I want my dollar amount. And my dollar amount is X, Y, and Z. Wonderful. The second way to monetize is to gain an experience. Maybe I can't get the dollar amount that I'm looking for, but I need more of the experience. So I was in that situation, right? The studio didn't want to pay me more. Maybe they couldn't pay me more, whatever, but I needed the experience. The third way to monetize is
yeah,
relationships. Now, hey, I'm not getting the dollar amount that I want. I don't really need the experience because I've been doing this forever, but I want to be able to do this with that person or that group or that production company. So I'm going to do it for the experience, right? Or the relationship, excuse me.
yeah,
What I had to learn is that you're going to fall within these categories, whether you know it or not. Right. But again, it trains you to really look at value differently and how you can leverage value or gain value. It hits different
yeah,
when you look at it that way. So again, people coming in with no experience, they have no relationships that they could leverage, etc., but they want the high dollar amount. You're probably not going to get it. Or the organization can't pay you out at that dollar amount, but you can gain the experience or you can build a
yeah,
relationship. I always say the experience and the relationship are just as important because it's something that you can always go back to. Some of my friends own studios that I still go back to and teach. Now they can pay X, Y, and Z, or they can offer X, Y, and Z, but it's always something that I know I can count on. Wonderful relationship, you know?
Yeah.
Especially now being a
Yeah.
convention
Yeah.
owner, they always look at me like I'm up here, and I'm like, no, I'm still here. I'm still chilling down here with
Yeah.
everybody. I ain't special.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do this, this, and this, and I'm not too common. I'm not too this or too
Yeah.
that to to do regular stuff and regular teaching, etc. Not everything has to be a master class of 200 people or more, which is really, really nice. And
Yeah.
so it's one thing that I've been sharing is 3 ways to monetize: dollar amount, experience, or relationships. Do not sacrifice one for the other, or do not be so narrow-minded that you don't
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
value in the others versus over one. And that can be both
Yeah.
ways. Humble yourself to do the work, or prop yourself up so that you can get to that dollar amount. I think creative
Yeah.
people are so used to not getting paid that there's almost this negative stigma. Oh, you do it for the money? Yes, because
Yeah.
rent and the car note is still due on the 1st and the 15th. I don't understand. Do you not like
Yeah.
eating 3
Yeah.
times
It's
a
a
day? I
weird.
mean, what you mean?
Yeah. 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 It's a weird.
Yes, it
Weird thing.
is. So it's like, for me, it was like,
It's very weird.
build the relationships, get the experience, then build the dollar amount. I didn't have the wherewithal to come in
Yeah.
at a high
Yeah.
dollar amount and then kind of work backwards. I did start from the ground up in
Yeah.
that sense because I had nothing to compare it to. I didn't grow up dancing at studios or
Yeah. Yeah.
dancing at conventions or doing competitions all the time. So I wasn't in that life to be able to go, this is what I'm about. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I found too that like it got to a point where I didn't even need to establish any sort of rate. It was just kind of like assumed. Like it was kind of like if a studio reached out to me, they kind of already knew,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to be
Sure.
paying X amount. And a lot of times that happened to align with what I was
Wonderful.
thinking in my mind as well. So I think once you get to like a certain level of like where people understand the quality and the value that you're bringing, you almost don't even have to negotiate a lot of times because it's just like, this is,
Yes.
we expect that we're going to have to pay this much. And I think that
Yes.
speaks to your journey. If that's happening, then that speaks directly to, if you're getting questioned about your prices, then to me, somewhere along the line, you've done something incorrectly because
Sure.
people aren't seeing
And I agree
the
with that.
value.
I agree with what you said, but I want to push back, not necessarily on what you said, but just to give context to it for the listeners, because that's what I mean by the conversation is different. We're not haggling over this, and this,
Yeah.
and the studio owner or the production or whoever's hiring you isn't giving you their life story about what they can't afford you, but they really want.
Yeah.
It's just that's a whole thing. But
Yeah.
but
Yeah. 100%.
you still can't expect people to see the value, because and the reason
No.
why I say it like
No,
that is
yeah.
because I meet a lot of younger students, again, younger in age or younger in experience, that go, that rely on someone seeing their value. No. This is why, again, everything's a paradigm shift from the very beginning.
Yeah.
I am here to collaborate.
Yeah.
I'm here to partner. Yes.
Yeah. Well, in defining what that value is, because I think
Yes.
that's the shift that you have to make as well. Is when you're younger and you're more ego driven,
Oh, my
you're a
goodness.
little bit naive to the situation. your perceived value is, oh, I'm good, or oh, I've done
Yes,
I
or
did
these are
well
my
at competition
credits.
growing up. And I think it's that age old thing of like,
Does not
just
mean you're a
because
good
you're a
teacher.
good dancer does not mean you're a good teacher. It's just very true. It's not
is.
not really cliche. It's just the truth of the matter. So I think that also that happens as well as when you're younger, you're perceiving your value as, oh, I'm a good dancer.
It doesn't.
But that doesn't
It
necessarily
doesn't.
translate
It does
to a
not.
studio
And
owner or a director.
some will hire you off of what they see. Great. But to your point, yes,
Yeah.
give you a month
Yeah.
on the job,
Yeah.
2 months on the job, and boom, you gotta go. And I've been in situations like that where people have
Yeah.
quietly asked me to leave because they're like, what, we just don't think this aligns. And again, being younger, being naive, being inexperienced,
for sure.
and not really knowing how that politics kind of plays out over time. And then something else that you said,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
they'll present a number, and because it aligns with what you're saying, or what you're thinking, you'll go for it. One thing I encourage people to do is reject the first offer no matter what. You have to. It builds character.
Mm. Mm.
It may be exactly what you want to get paid. Reject it. Yeah. And the
Yeah,
reason why, can we get
I
into
love
how
this.
we kind of
Okay.
establish rates?
Yeah, I was
So,
just gonna say, yeah,
okay, so let's
let's pivot.
talk.
Yeah.
Okay, you getting hired at a studio to teach weekly classes, right? Let's say you're in the interview, whether it's on the
Okay.
phone over Zoom or you're in person. One thing, again, when it comes to teaching is if you go from this place to this place, number one, you need to prioritize getting a bigger rate. Like if you're not prioritizing that, you're not really growing.
Mm.
You're not advancing, right? So if
Yeah.
I'm leaving this studio to and then I end up working at another studio, I'm gonna get paid more. It's a cardinal rule, okay? But it should definitely be a focus. Why?
Yeah.
Because then
Yeah.
you never actually increase your rate if you never increase your rate. So you're sitting with the employer,
Yeah.
the studio owner, and they're talking to you. You go through the whole spiel of what they're looking for, how you meet their qualifications, what they're excited to do with you about, and all of that. And then now we got to talk numbers, we got to talk money. Now here's the thing. I live in California, and per California law, an interviewer cannot legally ask you how much you got paid at your last job. They cannot legally ask you that.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
what they can
Interesting.
legally ask you, especially in the context of you being a dance educator, is what's your rate? You never answer that question,
Yeah.
and you never answer it directly. Okay? Because one of two things. One, they're trying to get you to put out a number. They're trying to see where you're at so that they can see where they're at. Now, the challenge is most people
Right.
will lowball themselves. And then that's why, again, you always reject the first offer, because you might end up lowballing yourself. The other thing is you might completely overshoot it, right? Being young, naive, or just not really understanding fair market value. And you may be asking for the stars and the moon. And then they're just like, yeah, no, thanks.
Yeah.
Right? So they'll go,
Yeah.
what's your rate? You never answer that question. So we'll do a little bit of role play, because I'll talk through this and we'll role play it. Jason, go ahead and
Yeah.
ask me. Great, I'm so excited, blah, blah, blah. What's your rate? And I'll demonstrate how you answer that.
Okay. All right, Jadell, thank you so much. We're really excited to
Super
have
excited.
you join the studio this season.
Really great question,
what's
Jason.
your rate?
Thank you so much. I think what will help me understand if this is a really good fit is if you actually share with me, what is the starting pay rate for teachers at your studio? You got to flip it. You got to flip it on its head. You got to get them to tell you what they're used to paying out, because it'll give you a ballpark of what that is in general, and it'll give you an idea. Now, one of two things will happen. It'll either be super honest, and that could work for you or against you. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. We only pay $25 an hour. Okay. At least, again, honesty. Got it.
Yeah.
Or the other thing will happen, which is they're like, oh, shoot. And they'll give you their best number. Oh, well, we pay $35 an hour. And you're like, okay, great. Now, here's the thing. Again, you never answer that question directly. You always redirect the question. Hey, I'm super excited to see if this is a good fit. How about you share with me what you guys are used to paying new studio hires? That will help me understand where you're at, and then also how we can move forward. You can word it however you want. You just want to keep it open-ended like that so that it doesn't come off of like, no, you tell me. Now, again, if they offer you $50 an hour by saying, oh, well, we normally start teachers at 50. If that works for you, wonderful. Still reject the first offer and ask for 52 an hour. Okay. If that doesn't work for you, here's how you can decline, but still keep the conversation going in that moment. So tell me a number and then I'll show you. Go ahead.
Starting pay is usually $45.
That's wonderful. I'm not able to commit to this role for $45 an hour. So what did I just do? I just said no without saying no forever. I said I couldn't commit to it. I didn't say 45 is not enough.
Yeah.
I didn't say you suck. I didn't say anything negative. I said I'm not able to commit to it. Now, here's the thing when it comes to negotiating. Do not react to any of the information. Don't have your face changed. Don't, or even if it's a number you really like, don't react. First one to
Yeah.
talk loses. So first one to talk loses. So when you say, how about to help me understand if this is a good fit, right? That's how I just took back my power. I decide if I want to work here, or I decide if we're truly going to collaborate, right? As well as them, they decide and I decide. It's not just one-sided. Let me know what you pay out, blah, blah, blah. Then shut up.
Yeah.
Until they talk. Oh, well, right? Then you hear the number. Don't react. Don't go, or neither one. Say, okay. If you can commit to that number, great. If you can't commit to that number, great. But you have to use the word commit. You can't say I don't like, or I'm used to getting paid this, or at my last job I got that. No, you just de-edified yourself. Because we're not talking about if I like the rate or if I don't like the rate. We're talking about, am I able to commit to this role?
Yeah.
From start to finish of the interview, from start to finish of the inquiry, it's whether or not I can commit to this. Because when we say yes to a role, with especially working weekly at studios, we're talking about a 9-month commitment, right? From fall to spring, from fall to end of the year recital. And if you're not thinking like that, then you need to get out now, because studio owners need commitment, longevity. They need long-term commitment. So in that, I'm talking to them like I'm considering the full competitive or full recreational season. So in that,
okay.
Don't react. Say what you got to say. Don't say anything. Keep it quiet. And then again, even if you like the number, reject it and propose another one. So you say 45. Oh, wonderful. I can commit to the role for 47. And then shut up. Don't say anything. Let them do more of the talking, right? Because it's a decision for them, just like it's a decision for you.
Yeah.
Because this is, again, we're here to negotiate. Now, in this negotiation, I don't want you to feel like you're being swindled. And I don't want to feel like I'm being swindled. So I'm not going to swindle you. But I am going to be honest with you. I had someone offer me a role and they said 60 an hour. I'm not able to commit to it for 60 an hour. And we had to find our way to the number that made sense for the work and made sense for me. Now, a lot of people go, well, how do you get to those numbers in general, right? How do you not just accept what's being offered? Well, you have to come to the table with expectations. Part of what you said, Jason, about not having conversations and then being frustrated later is, again, you have to learn how to come to the table with expectations. Yeah. I'm okay with having expectations for my studio owners and my directors. I expect you to be a leader. I expect you to be a transparent and fervent communicator. I expect you to be fair. I expect. I'm not asking, I'm not hoping, I expect it. And all of that is discussed in the interview as well. Yeah. Do you have any questions for me? As they would like to ask. Great. I do. What's the company culture here? Oh, well, everyone seems to get along. I love that everyone gets along. I think what I'm specifically asking is, when it comes to conflict, how is conflict addressed? Do we have mediation? Do we have one-on-ones? Are things mostly discussed through email? Speaking of email, is most communication done through email? Or do we get on weekly meetings, weekly calls? If so, are we paid for those weekly calls? When it comes, all of that, everything's a conversation. Everything's a negotiation. Yeah. Everything. I have expectations. I'm not getting on weekly calls. That's not going to happen. Yeah. For me. But again, I will divulge that when it's relevant in the conversation. Again, versus, and I wouldn't even communicate like, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. I'm not able to commit to that. I am able to commit to that. I'm not able to commit to that. So when we're talking about pay rates, for me, I look at fair market value. What are people getting paid in this area? Do I want more or less or the same?
Yeah.
Then I weigh that against, well, what are my daily expenses? I drive a muscle car. So gas, okay, and mileage is a write-off for me at this point. Okay, so in that, I'm looking at how much money does it literally cost me to get to the studio, and can I offset that in 1 hour of teaching? And if I can't, oh no, it's not enough. So I look at my daily expenses.
Yeah.
What do I need in order to be, to stay afloat and do what I got to do? And so whether that's gas, whether that's food for the week, my wife and I, she cooks amazingly, but we do those weekly food package ordering things like HelloFresh and all that. So she'll do that for me. So I look at those types of things. I look at what bills do I have throughout the week, throughout the month that come in at certain times. Great. I need to make this much in a day and in a week in order to offset this. I look at it from a practical standpoint. And then I look at it from, okay, do I like this rate?
Yeah.
So once I figured out, okay, I need a base of this. Now, if I'm adding me to the equation of what do I feel like doing, what do I like to do, that's where that conversation comes into. Because again, you really have to consider where the studio's at. And that's why I say aim for studios that have volume, high student count, because again, there's more money coming in that can help to afford those different fluctuations.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, and I know you're a big advocate of this as well, I think this is where having a quality mentor is really, really important as well. Because I know like there was a standout moment in my journey where I had a studio
offer you a job
state, from California wanted me to come out and be a director, and it was great. My wife and I, we went out for the week and we taught a whole bunch of classes and we kind of looked at the area, and they wanted me to teach 40 plus hours a week between like a preschool program.
You see my face?
And then comp routines in the afternoon. Yeah, and the pay was $4,000 a month, and I was like, me being younger, and I just didn't. I asked my mentor, I was like, what would it take for you to accept this position? And he told me a number, and I was like, cool, then that answers that. And it was a very simple process after that, because it was like, this is what I can't do, this is what I could do. And it was very easy for them at that point to say, no, that's not going to work. No problem. For us. It's okay, then that's not going to work for me. But it's just kind of, I think there is a time in your life where you just don't know. You know what I mean? It's like, because on one hand, I'm like, wow, $4,000, that's a lot of money. But then on the other hand, I'm like, that's also a ton of work doing something that I don't necessarily, I don't want to teach.
And again, and this is where, again, I love to talk about these things, because studios will hit you with that. You're on salary. And I'm assuming that was a salary role.
Yeah.
So then they cram everything they can in the salary role. And it's like, well, I might as well be the studio,
Yep.
That's why my face was like, nope. First of all, 40 hours. If you are past 25 teaching 40 hours, you're doing it wrong. I'm sorry. I mean, even if you're even touching 35 hours, it's unsustainable. It's literally unsustainable.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And you're like, I can do it. No, I'm not
lot.
questioning you if you can do it. I'm questioning how long you can do it. That's a good job for maybe a year. Yeah. Maybe 2 years if you're 21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the other thing that goes into the consideration is like, where are you at in life? Because again, at that point in time,
at 21, it's a lot of money.
Been okay
at 21, yes.
But now fast forwarding to now,
exactly.
Like, I don't know what I would do.
And you're a daddy,
with that.
So that's a whole like 4,000. My kid is getting most of that. In Cali
and in California, it's like.
Well, so here's the thing.
What am I going to do?
This is why I say again, I use the word commit, because it's okay to have deal breakers. It's okay to have deal breakers. I got offered a job to teach in another state. They sent me the stuff. The what they were offering income wise wasn't conducive to what I was used to. And what I would have wanted to get paid, still negotiable. Yeah. But I told them no anyway. They said, "Well, why? We're happy to do that. You guys have snow days." Weather for me is a deal breaker. I can't be too hot or too cold. I can't. I'm a Cali kid. I like all 4 of my seasons, okay? I can't. Especially at that point at my life, you know, I was single. I was unmarried. It was just me. It would have been easy just to move out there. And that would not have been the first time that I would have moved for a job. But I don't do snow, not even a little. I don't know what my kids, when we eventually have them, are going to do. Daddy, can we go to the snow? You can. I don't know what we're going to do because I'm not. Well, and my wife wants to move to Texas. She's like, the property there is so much cheaper. I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to make up the difference in what I'm saving in my AC bill because it's going to be hot as hello out there. I'm not doing it. You see how chocolate I am? I'm about to be a burnt crisp going out to Texas. You know? Looking like a raisin in the sun. Okay?
Yeah,
it's not going to work. So in that, for me, it's, you know, I'm very clear on what my deal breakers are. Weather to me, and then, you know, at the end of all of it, it's okay to ask, is this best and final? It's okay to ask. Or in me communicating, this is my best and final.
Yeah.
As in, there's no negotiating beyond this point. Or for them, is this is it? Because it's important to consider and just to remind yourself, studios have a bottom line, and their bottom line is, how much is this going to cost me? Even if it...
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
No.
You can't have hard feelings. You know, even if the studio is trying to short you, I feel like you should always err on the side of
it doesn't work for you, and that's why, again,
if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work.
In looking at these different situations, it's okay to have expectation. It's okay to have perspective, right? 3 ways to monetize, but you got to have your deal breakers. And again, you can communicate those as softly as you can, but I like to be direct and clear. So in that, I can't commit to it for this, or I can't commit to those hours, or I can't commit to that age group or for that style. And it's okay. It's okay. But I like to talk about, you know, that to this depth or to that perspective, because if you don't know, you don't know. And you can mess around and gain the wrong reputation. By playing the game wrong, you know? And so I tell my students in all transparency, 100%. I was a terrible 100%. Student when I was in college. When it came to my dance courses, I got a degree in dance, and my etiquette was all jacked up.
Yeah,
it was. And then I was so young, and I was teaching, and I didn't know what I was doing. And no one was really showing me how to do it right, let alone well. Yeah. So I would be late. I'd have excuses. I was unreliable. And I gained that reputation for a long time. And then around 23, age 23, I was like, okay, I got to fix this. Yeah. I started to pay attention. You know, but again, there was other factors. I was learning how to adult. I was in college. I was broke. There were so many other factors that played a role. My mental health played a role. So in that, I was learning how to live life, how to adult. So I wasn't in the place to be this all powerful. No, I wasn't in a place to be professional and reliable and communicative. These are things that I've learned over time, but I've also learned that these things hold value. Your character is enough to get you a job before they even see your work. Your reputation's enough to get you a job. My social media is enough to get me a teaching role without them actually seeing me in action. I mean, it shows enough so that they're able to see it, but all these things have value. All of these things play a role. All of these things are important. Yeah.
I would love to kind of end on what is your suggestion when people are like, I want to teach, what do I do now? How do I even find the studio? How do I, you know what I mean? What's kind of your perspective and your suggestion when people come to you with that?
I'm in California, so again, there are more studios on every corner than there are Starbuckses. So you landing a teaching role is fairly common, fairly simple, especially post-COVID. A lot of dance educators fizzled out of teaching and just pivoted careers. So there's a shortage of teachers. So it's a lot simpler, I would say. I wouldn't say easier, but simpler to get on someone's radar. At least here in California, and this is where I live, this is where I see it.
Yeah.
2 things. The first thing is depending on your age, if you're between the ages of 17 and 20, and that's your perspective, I want to teach, I would recommend take a year and TA for someone. Work for free and TA under an instructor. So, for example, I'm 17, I want to teach. I'm 18, I want to teach. Jason, I want to work for you by being your TA, your assistant. You need to get a mentor, essentially. Because what you need to learn is, how do you manage your classroom? What's the language that you use to your students to get them activated, to get them engaged? How do you teach warm-ups? To give you context, for me, I choreograph all of my warm-ups and they're set. So my students will run a warm-up, the same warm-up every week, every day, whatever it is. And they'll grow into the elements of that warm-up. So whether it be isolations, whether it be stretching in your splits, I choreograph all my warm-ups, and I have about a 10 to 15 minute warm-up. And so it goes through 3 different songs, etc. My point is I structure it that way. From there, I then go across the floor. I do progressions no matter the style. From there, we go center. From there, we end the class with a cool down, or we get into a big circle. We discuss, what do you like best about the class? What do you like best about the class? That's my classroom structure. That's what someone would learn when they TA for me or kind of shadow me, how I structure class. Then you learn the kind of language. Here's what you say to 5-year-olds to get them to do X, Y, and Z, but here's what you say to 13-year-olds to get them to do X, Y, and Z. So you need to do you need to shadow a dance educator if I'm between the ages of 17 and 20. If I'm 25 and older and I'm like, I want to teach, cold calling or cold emailing, I would say. Reach out via email. I wouldn't necessarily ask always to be put on their roster, but a way to indirectly ask, just depending, because again, it comes down to timing, right? Studios might already have their roster full, depending on the time of year that you inquire. But a cold email introducing yourself, hi, I'm such and such, just moved to the area, or hi, I'm such and such, I'm reaching out to inquire about guest subbing roles. Ask to be put on their sub list. It'll get you on their radar faster than asking them for a full-time or a part-time job, because if their roster's already full, they'll just say no and turn you away. If you ask to be put on their sub list, they'll keep you in mind, because studios always need subs. And it's a conversation starter. Well, what do you sub? What ages? What levels? What this? What that? And you're able to get to know them and introduce yourself on a different level. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, my studio owner informed me that she just hired someone to be a permanent sub. Because our schedule's already set, she can't offer him a teaching role. He had just graduated from Boston Conservatory, so he's here. And but again, permanent sub, which is great, because in a couple weeks I need a sub. But that's a better way, a stronger way, and a more direct way to kind of get your foot in the door, depending on what they already have set in place. Studios already have their rosters set by fall, and they start that, by spring of the following season. So in that, that's what I would recommend. But cold emailing, request to be put on their sub list, include all of your materials, your headshot, your updated bio, your updated resume, as well as a teaching reel. If you don't have a teaching reel, create a teaching reel. Do not submit your dance reel. That's not the same thing. That's a very clear, simple, direct way to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, I love that. I love that breakup too between 17 to 20 and then kind of after the fact. And I think the benefit too of like TAing under somebody is you hopefully
100%
be able to leverage their network by the time you decide to transfer out. I tell people all the time, I have so many studios reach out.
I can't do it, but you can call such and such.
And I'm like, no,
you can call Tyrone.
I don't teach anymore. Exactly. And then they're like, who do you know? And I'm like, well, I don't. Like, there's nobody that I would safely recommend to you, unfortunately. So it's like, I think that's the other opportunity there as well, is you're not only getting that experience, but then you're hopefully able to leverage that person's network.
100%.
If you choose
I have a mentee right now. She's in that 17 to 20 20-year-old age bracket. She's TAing for me. At the same time, she is applying for different roles. So I've referred her to studios owners I actually know personally. And so I've been like saying, mentoring her on, here's what you do in this situation. Here's what you do in that situation. When it comes to negotiating your rate, definitely go for this. And just, walking her through it.
Yeah.
And I've even had to give her feedback on, hey, make sure you do it like this, make sure you do it like that. Because in that, I remember I was talking to her and I just said, oh, this studio is hiring this studio. And then she went ahead and applied. And I said, next time, leverage your network so that your network can validate you before you go and apply. Because if you name drop me or anyone, but they haven't done the back work to go, hey, look out for this person. They're gonna you don't want to use anyone's name if you don't have their permission. That's number one. But number two, let that work for your benefit. I said I could have contacted them first and said, hey, reach out for look out for their email, look out for their call. That's enough for you to be like, oh, cool, at least I'm on their radar. I said, so you just want to go about it in a way where you're leveraging, not using and abusing, but leveraging, but also to where it works for you. Because if that goes wrong, if that doesn't go well, then I get a call. Why would you send such and such over here and they over here acting da-da-da-da-da? I have no idea what you're talking about. What are you talking about? Who are you talking about? So then so I had to give her the real where it's like, keep my name out your mouth unless we agree to it. But in being funny, but no, definitely helping her out to kind of get start off on the right foot, so that it benefits her, but also she's getting the experience she needs. And even though again, she's 17, and she has nothing to compare it to, no life experience. So it's like I can't say too much or overwhelm her with information that holds no context for her yet. So at the very least, I'm like at a base level. Make sure you do this many hours if you're going to come in on a Friday. Make sure you ask for at least this much so that, again, you're not paying more in gas to show up than you are actually leaving. And then make sure that you communicate X, Y, and Z for these types of resources or whatever, so that you have the support when you start to feel like you're out of your depth. I've had to leave it there because, again, you're so young and new to this that you don't really know what to expect. And when you go in so young, you're expecting the studio owners to teach you. And that's a mistake. And the challenge is, and this is where, again, if we talk about months from now, years from now, where that conversation starts to get on your nerves, or that dynamic, is if you kind of come in like, teach me, mold me, shape me, they're only going to see you like that. It's going to be hard for you to get out of that mindset of having to be handheld. They're not going to give you opportunities, not necessarily. They're not going to extend things to you because they see you as the one they had to shape.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's like, I said, so, there's going to be times where you're going to feel like you're out of your depth, which you will be. But then you have to be fervent to ask for help this particular way. So that it's a collaboration, not can you help me, or can you make allowances for me, or can you hold my hand? So it's just, it's a trade-off. But again, if you have the right mentor, they're able to give you bite-sized information of what you can handle, or give you enough structure, to be able to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Man, this is a good one. I really, really hope that people listening or, are really like kind of taking notes and digesting this information, because again, I think that like it's just hard to get this type of information. It's hard to find these open conversations about this type of stuff, and then you're just caught wandering and trying things. And like I think if people really, anybody listening, I just really hope you hear and see the value in this. And like this,
please,
Jadell has really laid out
copy
like
and paste it.
Copy paste.
Tried and true
option for
so I'll
you
give you
that
an example.
will
I was talking
work.
to
This
a
will
mentee
work.
just the other day. This gentleman, we were able to do our convention to help him get signed. So that was really great. And it's always great to check in, like, hey, how's it going? How's life? How's this? And, in mentoring him, just checking in every few months of, hey, just want to give you this, just want to give you this nugget, give you that nugget. But what's so amazing is, again, he got a degree
Yeah.
in dance with a minor in something else. So he has a degree in dance. He's also signed. And I asked him straight up, what are you getting paid at the studios that you're working at? And he said, this particular place is paying me $35.
Yeah.
I said, how's that working out for you? And he said, well, I wish I was getting paid more. I said, you definitely need to be getting paid more. He's like, well, I just didn't. I said, no. You have a degree and you're currently signed. You're a current working professional, excuse me. Credentials alone. What other qualifications do you need? I mean, he's an amazing teacher. He is an amazing teacher. So that's already a given.
Yeah.
I said, you need to be aiming for 60, 65 an hour at least. He's like, do you think, how do I was like, no, you're not going to get it from this particular. I said, the next studio you work at. So in that, it's like, you know, really having these conversations. Like, he's like, well, how do I justify that? I said, fair market value. I said, it's all in the language. How do you ask for a raise? Sorry. I love these conversations because I literally gave him a copy paste. So I said, okay, for your current studio job, here's how you ask for a raise.
Yeah.
I said, how long you been working there? I said, I've been there a year. I said, great, it's time for ask for a raise. I said, if you only been there a few months, it's not time for ask for a raise. You always got to wait till you're at that year mark, that year mark every year. And so I said, you know, you have to send an email. I said, these conversations, you have to navigate them through email. It has to be written, it has to be documented. If you catch a studio owner on the fly, and if you catch them while they're walking down the hallway, or if you catch them in a meeting or whatever, you just go into their office, they can brush you off really easily. And that's the end of the conversation. I said, so you got to navigate these conversations through email first. Before we even talk on the phone, talk in person, you have to establish it through email. He's like, well, what does that look like? I said, well, you have to say, you know, hi, Jason, how are you? Thank you so much for the opportunity to work for Jason Dance Academy. I've learned so much in the year that I've been here, the 2 years that I've been here, the 3 years that I've been here. I've especially loved participating in the competitive choreography, the recital opportunities, as well as the guest teaching opportunities and collaborations. I even appreciated the additional responsibilities of X, Y, and Z that you gave me. It helped me grow as a leader, a communicator, as well as a dance educator. And I'm so grateful. As I'm planning my next steps and considering X, Y, and Z moving forward, I've been considering cost of living expenses, other things considering cost of living expenses, other things considering cost of living expenses. And I would like to request a pay increase of $35 an hour to $45 an hour based on fair market value, based on blank, blank, and blank. And then you end the email saying, I appreciate, thank you for your time and consideration concerning this important matter. And I appreciate you working with me on this. I look forward. I hope to come to an agreement that works for you as well as for me. I look forward to hearing from you soon. And so I shared that with him where it's like, one, you got to be gracious in your email. But two, you have to indirectly lay out the roles and responsibilities that you've mastered or that you've tackled. And then be sure to include added roles and responsibilities because we all know that studio owners love to ask you to do more than what you agreed to in the beginning. Can you stay later for this? Can you do the recital dance with the kids? Can you blah, blah, blah. So you put that nicely in the email. And I appreciated the added responsibilities of blank, blank, and blank. They've helped me grow. And then you leverage cost of living, fair market value, and anything else that is measurable, tangible, not emotional, to justify you asking for your raise. Now, in that, you make it clear that you are planning next steps or, you know, considering your future, which means you're indirectly saying, I'm prepared to not work here if we don't come to an agreement that works. But you're not threatening to leave because it's not about threatening. It's about, again, finding what works for you and finding what works for them. But you essentially say, thank you for working with me on this, meaning you're expecting them
Right.
to play ball. And that's okay, because it's like, we got to figure this out. And if it doesn't work out, no problem. You have to be okay with that. One thing that I share with people that I actually read in an interview that Shonda Rhimes gave is she said, never enter a negotiation if you aren't willing to walk away. She's like, if you aren't willing to walk away, then you're not really negotiating. So in that, for me at least, my rule of thumb is if I'm afraid to ask for a raise, damn it, I got to ask for the raise. Because it'll build something in me, but it'll also have me, come to terms and come to grips with the reality of my situation with the studio. If everything's all copacetic, then great. If things are not copacetic, it gives me an opportunity to address them. But I do that through email because it gives the studio owner the opportunity to fairly consider my request. If I just come into their office and have an emotional conversation, I feel like I should get more. I feel it gives them the opportunity to address your feelings and not your reality.
Yeah.
So that's also something I shared with the gentleman who, again, degree and signed and currently working in the industry. And I said, that's how you ask for a raise from where you are right now. But be okay, be prepared to walk away, So in that, but just again,
that's
navigate the conversation through email, get it in writing, whether they agree or disagree, get it in writing, because one gives you a reference point, and two, it covers your bases. A lot of things are discussed on the fly or in an office, and the challenge is there's no record of that information. So when studio owners renege or when plans change or things change, you don't really have a reference point. Exactly. So in that, in asking for a raise,
stand on,
or in negotiating rates, etc., I like to kind of lay it out that way. These are all things that are tried and true. Over the pandemic, I started coaching and mentoring dance educators and helping them kind of level up. Here's how you can make more money. Here's how you can teach for the conventions. Here's how you can work in the competition sector. And a lot of them went on to do those things because it was like, here's the script. I quite literally have a script where you just switch out the name, out the name of the studio, switch out some of the roles and responsibilities that you were able to perform, or switch out X, Y, and Z for guest teaching, subbing, guest faculty, pay increase. I have, literal scripts, and I was able to get dancers work, choreographers work, guest teaching, permanent roles, etc. Because it's quite simple. I wouldn't say it's easy because it's a numbers game. Talk to 10, get 1, law of averages, but tried and true. So I loved sharing this with dancers.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, again, if you are listening, I really, really encourage you, take notes, watch this back. I think this is a really important episode for a lot of up and coming dancers that are wanting to teach and they're not really sure what to do. Because there is a wrong way to do it. And I think that there's several right ways to do it. And one of them has been laid out in this episode. So
thank you.
Jadell, thank you so much. Thank you again. I can't thank you enough for these conversations, for being a guest, for the relationship that we have created. And
thank you. It's been so much fun. And hopefully it's dance pleasure. Educators, choreographers, etc., can take this information.
I know,
and build on it. Follow me on Instagram, any listeners, at Jadell Lee, JADELLLEE. If you have any questions or follow-ups about any of the information that we've talked about over the course of these 3 episodes, definitely reach out to me. And then also, come to our convention, Elevate Convention. Our website is letselevatedance.com, and our Instagram handle is elevateconvention.dance. And our dates are October 1st, San Jose, California at the Doubletree. October 29th, Orlando, Florida at the Doubletree Airport Hotel. And then also November 12th, thinking of all the dates, November 12th at the Embassy Suites Hotel in Glendale, California. So,
all the links will be in the description of this, whether you're listening or watching. So if you want to head to the description, you can find all those links. Follow him.
And definitely reach out if you have any questions.
Eat up all this information, sponge it up.
And attend our convention. It's going to be fun.